In 1911, there was a race among nations to prove that they were the greatest. And in order to do that, the nation has to reach South Pole first, which nobody has ever conquered. In that conversation, two teams came up. The first team was British team, and the second team was Norwegian team. On British team, the leader told the team that we should walk as much as possible on a good weather condition, and we should try to see how much we can walk on a bad weather day. On the other side, the Norwegian team lead told them that we should walk 15 miles a day. If the weather conditions are good, we walk 15 miles. If the weather conditions are bad, we walk 15 miles. Both the teams started at the same time from different locations. The UK team followed their plan. So on a good weather day, they walked as much as possible, trying to put all their energies. But on a bad weather day, they could hardly move because all the team members were really tired. On the other side, the Norwegian team walked just 15 miles a day. On a good sunny day, they walked 15 miles. And when it's snowing, it's raining, they tried to push and walked 15 miles. When the Norwegian team was just 45 miles away from the South Pole, the team were really confused whether to finish it in a day or follow the plan that they already have. What would you might have done in this case? Please pause the video and write that in the comment section below. The Norwegian team member told them that we should stick to our plan. We should walk 15 miles and finish the remaining 45 miles in 3 days. They did exactly the same. Later, it was found that not only Norwegian team finished the race first, they finished it 30 days ahead of the UK team. And what's more unfortunate was while returning back, all the UK team member died or passed away. And all the Norwegian team members reached their destination and home country safely. So, what's the learning from this 100-year-old story? The learning is pretty simple. Pace will always beat push. If you push, your progress will be hampered. And the same principle of inspect and adapt is being utilized in Scrum. So let's get into the detail and understand what Scrum is all about. And I will also relate Scrum to this Norwegian story of South Pole while I'm explaining you the real concept. So let's get into it. The term Scrum comes from a game of rugby. So if you look at this picture, there are two teams fighting against each other, and this small team which makes sure that the ball get into the goal post on the other side is called Scrum. Now let's get into the details of it. Scrum is a lightweight framework, so it's important that we keep the framework extremely light and not complex. It helps people, teams, and organization. And it's important to understand that it is designed for complex problem and not for simple problem. Adaptive solution means that teams should be adaptive enough to make changes whenever required. So I will give you an example. In 2019, I ran a full marathon. When you run a 42-kilometer full marathon, even if you deviate a little bit from the marked line, you run maybe a kilometer or two extra once you finish 42 kilometers. And the same happens in projects. So if the team deviate a little bit, it's important to bring back to the original marked line or defined line as soon as possible in order to reduce waste. Consider a football team. A football team will have a midfielder, a striker, and a defender. So in totality, this is complete unit. And the same goes with the Scrum team. And that's what is written here. It's a cross-functional, self-organizing team, which means that you should have a developer, a tester, a business analyst within the same team so that you are cross-functional and self-organizing in order to deliver value to the end customer. Value could be anything ranging from saving the cost to giving new features. For example, look at this watch. The people who made it has given value to the end customer that now I can pick up my phone from this watch. I can see how much I have walked during the day. I can even use various apps installed on my mobile phone through this watch as well. And what does the company got in terms of value? They got the money or the revenue. It's also important to understand the next few terms. Product progress in a series called sprints. Now, going back to our original story of Norwegian and UK team, consider 15 miles a day as a sprint. So it's important that this product should progress in a series so that the team does not get exhausted. It is delivering value frequently. Requirements are captured as items in a list of product backlog. We'll also look into details what product backlog is all about, who maintains it in the future video. But for the time being, understand product backlogs are nothing but a list of items that you need in your product. And it's a framework, not a process or a tool. So it's not Microsoft PowerPoint. It's not Office. It's a framework that allows you to execute complex problems. It allows you to build adaptive solution. And it's important to understand that it's context sensitive and differ widely on Scrum usage. So it's a prescriptive term, which means Scrum guide only prescribe how things can be done. For example, keeping yourself healthy, there can be prescriptive term. Now, what you do to keep yourself healthy is up to you, whether you are running, cycling, swimming, going to a gym. That's all up to you. So it can differ based on the context. So for example, in one of my project, the sprint duration was 2 weeks. In the other, it was 3 weeks, and it actually fit in based on the context. Scrum is built by Scrum team. And a Scrum team essentially work on list of features or items and try to build them incrementally. And that's what is written in the first statement, that Scrum team turns a selection of work into an increment of value during a sprint. So if you look at our story of UK and Norwegian team, for a Norwegian team, within one day, how much they are able to progress is the value that they are able to deliver at the end. Now, as we already discussed, the Scrum team is cross functional. Scrum Guide suggests three roles. Scrum Guide is a 18-page document written by founders of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber. If you have not read it through, I will provide this link of this PDF. Please go through it. Not only once, but twice or thrice at least, in order to imbibe all the concepts. Indeed, most of the material that you see here is being taken from Scrum Guide, because that lays the foundation of all the certification, all the questions that might appear in your interview, and also it helps you to imbibe certain principle that you can actually apply in your day-to-day work. So if this team has multiple roles, what are those roles? The first role is of product owner, second one is scrum master, and the third is of developer. Now consider a musical concert going on. There will be a music composer. For example, in the concert, you have a big orchestra, and then you have a leader who makes sure that the orchestra is following the rhythm, the pitch, the tone, the voice modulation. So all the instrument players, whether it's violin, guitar, flute, etc., are the developers. The person who is managing the orchestra can be considered as scrum master, and the original composer of this music is the product owner. In the next videos, we will also talk about all these roles with their roles and responsibilities in detail. But for the time being, try to understand these roles with the simple analogy of music concert. We have already talked that the Scrum team is cross-functional, which essentially means not all team members should have all the skills, but they should be self-sufficient. And it's important to also remember what should be the size of the team. Scrum Guide suggests there should be 10 or fewer members. What it means is, suppose you take 5-member team. You have one Scrum Master, one product owner, and only 3 developer. There is no point in having these 3 developers having a Scrum team, because you have to do a lot of ceremonies, and there is no point in making all these ceremonies just for 3 people. So it's important that you have certain size in which you operate in. Just to understand this, using another analogy, suppose you have a rowing boat having 5 or 7 member seat. You have one person who will guide the entire rowing staff how to row. You can of course add few more people to the rowing boat that will add to the velocity of this rowing boat, but that will also put more weight on the boat, and it can get into the water very, very quickly. So it's important to have the right size team here. In a football match, what happens if the midfielder says, "Oh, I'm not responsible for this loss"? This cannot be taken into consideration. The same goes with Scrum team. The entire Scrum team is accountable for the value that they are delivering. So if they are delivering good value, the entire team must be rewarded. And if something goes bad or not up to the mark, entire team is to be held responsible. So in this video, we learned about how Scrum progressed. The term Scrum came from the game of rugby. It is essentially a team of 10 or fewer members. Three roles are defined: Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Developers. It's a cross functional team, self organizing. It ensures that it works on complex problem in an adaptive manner. And remember, pace will always beat push. So try to be a Norwegian team that deliver everything with a pace. In the next video, we talk about the various roles. Until then, thank you very much. Goodbye.